Ci sono altre domande? Prego.
Marco Bonardelli, Teresimo. Volevo chiedere al signor Branagh, noi abbiamo sempre visto i suoi film doppiati. Lei ha mai avuto occasione di sentire doppiato in italiano uno dei suoi film? E vorrei anche chiederle qual è la sua opinione circa il lavoro dei nostri doppiatori.
I've only briefly heard myself in Italian, and I sounded very Italian, and it seems miraculous to me. It's a terribly hard job to do. I've tried to do it myself sometimes the other way round, and I think there's an incredible skill level here. I mean, you must have to do this all the time, Andy. It seems it's a sort of out of body experience, frankly, to watch yourself and hear another language come out. I've never been more fluent in Italian than when I watch myself over here, but it's a very difficult thing to do. But it's an enjoyable experience.
It's kind of wild, isn't it? You are playing, you're an Englishman playing a Swedish detective dubbed in Italian.
Buongiorno, sono Paolo Scotti del Giornale. Volevo chiederle, lei è celebre in tutto il mondo anche per essere riuscito a rendere popolari e accessibili al grande pubblico cinematografico i classici del teatro shakespeariano. Ritiene che la televisione possa oggi, nonostante le necessità dei dati d'ascolto, in Italia siamo molto legati purtroppo a queste necessità, non so in Inghilterra, ma in Italia Shakespeare in prima serata sarebbe impensabile. Il genere più colto che possediamo e più squisitamente italiano, ad esempio l'opera lirica, in prima serata è del tutto improponibile. Allora, lei pensa che la televisione possa, o debba meglio ancora, lei pensa che la televisione, il dovere della televisione sia anche quello di portare cultura nonostante le necessità degli ascolti, le necessità commerciali? Grazie.
Well, again, very interesting questions this afternoon. A couple of responses to that. In England, for instance, we have an immensely popular television program called Doctor Who, which you may well know. It stars a very brilliant young actor called David Tennant. And he also recently performed Hamlet with the Royal Shakespeare Company. And the BBC, I now believe, are about to film him as Hamlet. Not necessarily that production, I don't know the details of it. But I know that there is a real connection between an immensely popular television actor in an immensely popular television show made by the same broadcaster, the BBC, now presenting that same actor as Hamlet, and I think that there's a connection there that's where somehow you might say, you know, where market forces also meet, you know, a possibility for two things to happen at the same time, where his talent can be used to present a classic that might not otherwise be seen. And then when it comes to the other part of your question, really, or what it relates to, I'm interested to see. I don't know if it happens here. But in England and in the UK, in America and in the UK also, performances of opera from the Metropolitan Opera in New York and now from the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden are beamed, live performances are beamed to cinemas in the UK. Special performances perhaps once a month or once every 2 weeks where you know, great stars in a famous production at the Met or at the Royal Opera House, and sometimes now with the Royal Shakespeare Company, are being actually beamed live into cinemas, and it is an immense success. Now, it's not a situation where those performances play 8 times a week or 5 times a day in a multiplex, but now sometimes once a week, really, you know, rather unusual and rare classical pieces are being offered to the audience in a different kind of way. So I'd say what your question begs about how we live, how culture, or whatever you might call high culture, high art, lives in a marketplace that is driven by commercial needs. I think somehow it finds a way, and those are a couple of the ways that I've noticed recently. What's your feeling about that? question, Andy.
Well, it's complicated, isn't it? I think television doesn't have a duty as such. I think it never can really in any country particularly. But
what do you think about that in relation to the BBC and that public service ethic? Do you think that that's now changed? I mean, the BBC to serve, to educate, that kind of brief that was the old BBC isn't possible any longer.
I think it's very tough, isn't it? I mean, it's under tremendous commercial pressures to compete with commercial companies, and therefore the BBC is always in a position that it's not easy for it to win either way. If it goes up market, it's criticised by having low ratings. If it goes down market, it's criticised for not doing what it's expected to be done. So it's always in a tough position.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point in relation to how possible what you're asking about is these days.
Prego.
Sì,
Sì, il microfono.
l'avevano dato.
Ah, scusate. Sì, se alzate le mani perché
Sì, no,
altrimenti io
alzate,
non...
ma non portate.
No, sì.
Buongiorno, sono Emanuele Rauco di Cineforme. Volevo fare una domanda al signor Branagh e un'altra al signor Harris. Al signor Branagh volevo chiedere, proprio legandomi a questo discorso del teatro, della televisione e del cinema, lei è famoso per un tipo di prodotti molto particolari, molto insomma di qualità. Sappiamo però che il suo prossimo progetto come regista sarà un blockbuster sui supereroi, Thor. Quindi volevo chiederle più o meno che approccio può avere rispetto a un tipo di film così diverso da quello che ha sempre fatto. E poi al signor Harris, come produttore di Wallander, volevo chiedere come mai, visto che esistevano già dei film su Wallander prodotti in Svezia, come mai la scelta di restare in Svezia piuttosto che ambientare i film in Gran Bretagna? Grazie mille.
I'll answer the first question first, which is that my approach really to each project is the same in as much as I first need to feel a passionate interest in the subject, and then how one approaches it and one's desire to produce a very high quality in it remains the same. So it really remains the same whether it's a 4-day shoot for 10 days to war for a short film about Tim Collins that we shoot in Jordan, or whether it's Thor for Marvel Studios in Hollywood. One's still trying to do the very best job one can and realize it in the fullest and most complete way. And my interests have always been divergent in terms of the media. I still like to work in radio. I still work in the theatre. I still like to write. The scale of the project is not a reason to do it or not do it. It's really just a question of what I was describing with Wallander, actually, which is the creative experience, and that's what I try to preserve: the quality of the creative experience, and the actual size of the project is sort of just turns out to be whatever it is.
Well, you asked about why we chose to to film the books in Sweden as opposed to, I guess, reimagining them in the UK or somewhere. Well, the material essentially is so integral to Sweden. I couldn't imagine filming the books. I couldn't see any purpose or value in just taking the plots, and the plots are very good, serviceable plots like any crime piece. But that wasn't what is great about Henning Menkel's writing. It's the intrinsic sense of clear understanding of Swedish culture, Swedish history, Swedish politics, and the impact as a detective. And I think that's exactly it. Ken felt exactly the same way. And very luckily, when I pitched it to a lady called Jane Tranter at the BBC, she was hugely excited by that. That is what she wanted. Now, I don't think 5 or 10 years ago we would have been able to do that. I think that is part of the changing world. It is part of an appetite for perhaps slightly more exciting, slightly sort of different way of seeing detective stories. I think people are more interested in seeing the stories that they want to see, but seeing them in a different kind of setting, a setting that is more challenging, basically. Just fundamentally more interesting. You get more out of watching Wallander than just a story. You get hopefully